The city of lost and found. My grandmother died last year, and long after the initial stab of grief, the hanging shadow of her despair felt like a curse, a stretching finger, gnarled as an old root, beckoning, promising to return. I did not want to add to the collective sorrow. I talked to my sister on the phone and patted my mother's back. I did what I do best. I held it like a breath, like a note you crumple in your fist. I spent December packing my life into cardboard boxes and begging to be allowed to begin again, across the country, far from the endless winters of my hometown, their wet, grey, sulking skies, the suffocating dusk that settles for months at a time. I had weathered it, year after year, as I weathered my own sadness. But suddenly, I was scared of this place, of what it would do to me if I stayed. I had learned what comes of a whole life of stasis. One day, you catch your own face reflected on the window, superimposed over that same view you see morning and night as you lift and lower the blinds. You are shriveled and alone. You've been unhappy since childhood. You've lived doggedly, with white knuckles and no relief, one step at a time, daring to look no further than the tip of your shoes. But now the much-feared road ahead has slipped past. Nothing changed, and at this late hour, nothing will. They close in, those thoughts you've batted away like corpse flies for decades on end. Many mouths speaking in one voice, saying what they've always said, insisting that, you see, they were right all along. So you stop your mad paddling, your tens of daily rituals meant to keep the emptiness at bay. You stand still and sink like a stone. Another ring in the ripples of a family history that's been running in circles. A few days into the new year, I left, staring straight ahead through the frosty windshield. I moved into a small apartment under an old couple's house, and on the very first morning I woke up there, I drew open the curtains to see a bright January sun, peeking, grapefruit-colored, through the trees of the nearby park. Every day, I laced my hiking boots and walked for hours. I visited little free libraries, flea markets, and second-hand shops, filling the empty shelves, finding comfort in this piecemeal making of a new existence, made with the flotsams of others. I felt cared for by the city, by this force that always seemed to push onto my path exactly the book I needed, the signs and wonders I lacked, summoning objects from thin air and laying them onto the pavement at my feet. Scarves and pens and painted pebbles, a silver pendant shaped like a horseshoe on the 1-month anniversary of my move. The city, an eager friend offering gifts. Here, have this, have that. I swear to you there is tenderness in the world, if only you let yourself look for it. Since girlhood, I've always found things on the ground, coins and toys and bent hair clips, but even the lost and discarded items change from city to city. The first few weeks, I noticed a striking amount of solitary socks. I wondered who they were, these strangers, walking with one bare foot, as though oblivious to the wintry shiver. It reminded me of the clothes people fold before they walk into the sea. But here, they had stopped halfway, pondered, and decided otherwise. I felt I was like them, already one of them. Half drowned but kicking towards the other shore. Heavy, soaked through with the sort of baggage you can't leave behind, even as you know that if you don't loosen your death grip on the dead weight of the past, it will drag you down with it. The months passed and I found my footing. I worked on campus, I wrote research papers, I discovered what shop sells the cheapest soy milk. In the summer, I traveled for work. I gave and heard talks, met colleagues, felt, for the first time, even if tenuously, that I was part of something, that, perhaps, there was a place I could belong. On my last day on the East Coast, I stood in a streetcar alongside a woman who had attended the same symposium I had. She recognized me, smiled, and wished me bon voyage, a safe return home. And I realized she was right. I was heading home. Home to my place in the sun, to my second chance. I did not know at the time that I'd see her again. That, again, she would look at me and smile with her whole face, touch my arm, and tell me I was good. Almost carelessly, as though it were obvious and therefore unimportant. Except to me, casual affection is anything but casual. It sounds nearly insane. It sounds supremely sad. But until that moment, I had dragged with me this bone-deep certainty, this wrongness, and no conscious effort had ever washed the stain, pierced the shell, convinced that stubborn, crumpled self that stood, unwavering and mortified, beyond language, beyond reasoning, beyond reassurance, at a remove from life. And yet this woman who laughed, danced, smoked old Hollywood cigarettes, spoke with wild enthusiasm and soft husky undertones. This woman with a long mane of hair, the ends bleached golden, eyes bright, brimming with wit and kindness. This woman who seemed to me made entirely of light, thought me of the same dazzling sun. She did not know what had been done to me. The dark places had been made to crawl. She only saw what I couldn't myself see, that, in spite of it all, I had not been extinguished, that, though there is no return, no redo, nothing is set, and no one is doomed. I cried on the train, on my way back, thinking that I was glad I survived my childhood and the terrible emptiness of the years that followed, thinking that I was glad that, amongst all the things I found, there was the strength to outrun my despair. Now it is nearly November again. My grandmother will soon be a year in the ground, or rather, a year in the wind. And of course, the pendulum still swings from the branches of this crooked tree, ready to reach the end of its rope and knock another domino. But for the first time in decades, I've seen a change in the seasons. The leash that had kept me from this dash for escape, tied to whatever measly love I'd had, sickly and sickening. That tether that snapped the same moment her noose tightened, was in part habit and in part terror. I believed that if I dropped from their sight, from that line of duty, I would simply disappear. But since, I've discovered another kind of bravery, not teeth-gritting forbearance, but the courage of hope, the stripping of scarred bark to reveal fresh skin, raw and blank, without roadmaps or fingerprints.